as you moved up the ranks in college football and became a very accomplished assistant coach and coordinator, you became, I think, a professional interviewer at one point. I almost lost track, but let me see if I got them all. Kansas, East Carolina, Tulsa, Minnesota, Cal, and Vanderbilt. You mentioned Cal is the one that really kind of crushed you. That's when they hired Jeff Tedford. But I mean, obviously, being an African American and trying to break through that barrier, you get pigeonholed as an assistant. You are the first African American coach of any sport at Texas. So we've had an African American president for almost 6 years before we had a coach at Texas. And what's interesting, Charlie, is now that you've been hired in this job, and you were the first black coach in the Big East and the first black coordinator at Florida, I keep reading that, like, you got to do well, otherwise other African Americans aren't going to get this opportunity. And I frankly don't understand that connection. I mean, you could do a great job, but that doesn't mean if I hire an African American, he's going to be great. Does that kind of bother you that people are putting that on you right now?
Well, you know what I do, Seth? I look at like David Shaw, and I look at the job he's doing now at Stanford, and I look at Franklin, and I look at the job he did at Vanderbilt. And there's some really outstanding African-American coaches out there. And I can remember when I was going through that process, and I hit that roadblock. And so I felt like that, this probably would never happen for me. But if it doesn't happen, and I was a defensive coordinator at the time, I said I had to continue to work hard so that I can impact someone else, some young African-American who's coming along who will be given that opportunity. And a lot of times I look at, there's tall shoulders that I stand on, and I just think about the barriers. The other day I was just watching 42, and I was watching Jackie Robinson, and you think about just what he had to go through, and not only him. And you look at that piece on Hank Aaron a few weeks ago when he made his statements. But we can only imagine some of the trials and tribulations that they had, just what they had to go through and what they had to endure. So they paved the way for me. And it's not so much that if I don't do good, I don't think the door will be closed on other African Americans. I think they'll be given that opportunity. But you look at it, it's a time where we have a job, and it's at an unbelievable university, the top 1% of 1%. So you've been given that job. So and I told our coaching staff, I said, you guys, if we fail, we can only blame ourselves, but that's within any job.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds odd to even ask this question because you have one of the best jobs in all of sports. Forget about football, forget about college athletics, all of sports. Yet, it did take you a while to break through, first at Louisville. I mean, is there any doubt in your mind that if you were not African American, that if you were a white coach, then your path to being a head coach would have been faster than it was?
I don't know. It's just, and I always look at, like, even the universities that interviewed me, I said that, at that time I wasn't the fit for that university. And so they made a decision to hire whomever they hired. And the road has been, I kind of sat back and say, Seth, but I've been very blessed to coach at some unbelievable universities, even be a part of 2 national championships. And so I just knew at some point it was going to happen. When, I did not know. But, what an honor it is right now to represent the University of Texas and be the head football coach.
Of course, you don't have to ask you about our mutual friend, Red McCombs, billionaire booster, wanted, I don't know who he wanted for the job, but when you were hired, called it a slap in the face. I know he's apologized for this, but the more interesting thing that he said about you was that I think he'd make a fine position coach, maybe a coordinator. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, a lot of African American assistants here as they're coming up. Not to mention that you were already a very good head coach at Louisville. And I know that, you said that you and Red are fine, but when he said that about being an assistant and a coordinator, did that kind of ring familiar that you've heard over the years?
Well, you know what? A lot of times things are going to be said, and the thing that was important at that time was I am at the University of Texas, so whatever is said from here on I can only be the one that can close the door on those topics or close the door on what anyone has to say. And I didn't let it bother me because at the time I didn't know who Red McComb. I knew who he was, but I'd never had the opportunity to meet him. But so we had to sit down and had a chance to sit down and talk. And he told me, he expressed, how he felt at the time, which was fine. And I'm happy he did it. But there's a guy who's given a lot to the university, and he felt like that, whatever circumstances it was that he wasn't made aware of. But I don't let. I try not to let conversations or what anyone say about me, because Seth, at the end of the day, I just got to go get that football team, go ready, go play.